What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with a quick sort of day one loot breakdown for episode Heresy. We'll talk about acquiring new weapons, armor, and all of the upgrades that we can do, as well as progress towards the Tome of Want, which is going to be the attunement system for rewards in the game this episode. So we'll discuss all of that, future Adept variants of these weapons, but additionally, we'll talk about exotics that we'll get as part of this episode as well, and we actually have 4 exotic weapons for episode Heresy, which is certainly nice. 2 of them we saw in the Bungie preview, but there is an additional 2, one which comes from the dungeon, and another which is actually going to be reprised from Destiny 1, surprisingly. So a few quick things to touch on today, guys. As always, if you enjoy the video and find it useful, a like rating below really does help us out. But now, let's get into it. And so initially, there is this sort of intro quest, as always, for the episode content. The quest elements are actually relatively in-depth this time around, and they ultimately, initially lead us to acquire the Tome of Want from Eris's apartment. So it's worth working on getting this as soon as possible, as it will unlock plenty more rewards as we move forward with the episode. The initial unlock of it that we get will come with a tome engraving called King's Vestige, and it's a boost for an artifact perk where defeating a volatile target grants class ability energy. As we continue to upgrade that tome though, we'll get additional engravings, but we'll also unlock additional scriptures, which can be used essentially to target certain rewards. So when we first pick it up, we have the option to focus for episodic weapons or armor, and over time we'll unlock the option to focus for reprised weapons, world weapons and armor, and materials. Beyond that though, we'll get into much more in-depth focusing, targeting specific weapon archetypes or slots of armor, and then there's the Ritual of Desire here at the end, and we'll get access to these by unlocking more of the taken scriptures and earning items called Essence of Desire. We get a few of these by playing the actual quest that leads us into the Nether, and then more of them will drop inside of the Nether activity. When we're running through the Nether activity though, of course, we'll pick up plenty of sigil shards, which is the seasonal currency, as well as an item called Metastasized Essentia. And when we have 10 of these, we can actually turn them in at the relic inside of Eris's apartment for additional rewards. And otherwise, we can see all of the rank rewards for the shaping slab right here, including some of the seasonal weapon mods that Bungie spoke about, Path Mastery, which are sort of additional perks related to Sandbox, and scriptures that can reward exotic currencies, Ascendant Alloys, Shards, and exotic engrams, as well as more engravings, those Essentia items, which will basically just give us more rewards, and a few other things. Otherwise, when we actually play through the Nether, it's pretty easy to pick up a lot of episode weapons. So they'll drop pretty consistently throughout encounters from chests, on enemy kills, and things like that. In terms of the Adept versions of them, I'm assuming there'll be some secrets on the Dreadnaught that will ultimately lead us to them, perhaps the harder difficulty of the Nether in upcoming weeks. And so otherwise, that's something we'll have to wait and discover. Quite a few different materials and things to take in. In terms of Dreadnaught exploration, there are a few different zones, secrets and puzzles as well as collectibles there, so on first impressions that looks pretty cool. Keep in mind as well, if you're after any of the weapons from the episode, there'll be a weekly seasonal challenge. We'll get these for the first act at the very least, and each of them will award a specific episode weapon, which essentially is just an additional drop. I think they can come as masterworks. So for the moment, that's kind of where we're at. It comes down to upgrading the Tome of Want, picking up the extra currencies, doing the rank upgrades at the vendor menu, and things like that. In terms of some exotic reward things to be aware of though for this episode, we're going to get straight into spoiler territory here momentarily. In my previous video, we spoke about what appears to be the new dungeon exotic, and you can actually view the ornament for this in collections under linear fusion rifles. And here, shared by Harry on X via Bungie Leaks, we can see the full models for the fusion rifle. I believe the one at the top has the standard visuals, and then we've got the ornament at the bottom. Turns out the exotic perks for this one are actually visible in the database, interestingly, and there's Ruin Scribe's Forge, and you can activate the alternate weapon action to fire a special projectile that deploys a Ruin Scribe turret. This projectile costs 3 ammo to fire. Aim the projectile skyward to provide the clearest line of sight for the turret, which will automatically shoot at nearby targets. Then it has Ruin Scriber's Beacon, and while a Ruin Scribe turret is deployed, the weapon can paint targets with its laser projectiles, and the turret prioritizes painted targets and fires more powerful munitions at them. Plus we can swap between normal fire and laser fire modes, so this actually sounds pretty wild, certainly something quite different, and I look forward to actually trying it in the game. Separately though, Bungie Leaks also shared that it would appear No Land Beyond is set to return at some point during episode Heresy. So they've said No Land Beyond Reprise currently has an unknown source. Again, we can't view perks for it in Destiny 2. Take this with a pinch of salt as well, as it hasn't yet been officially confirmed by Bungie, but the data is certainly in the game. And it even has a lore tab that you can see right there. We won't read the whole thing, but with this much data for the weapon, I would assume that it is going to drop during episode Heresy. Of course, in D1 it had the exotic perk The Master, which increased precision damage and kills briefly increased damage against the next target. So I'm really curious to see how that may have been updated for Destiny 2. Possibly this is something that will drop later on in the episode, maybe even as a kind of end of season thing or something like that. And as players have discovered, based on the timeline when we look at the season pass, this season should be 161 days, meaning that Heresy theoretically, based on this, will end on July 15th. That doesn't give us a confirmed release date for the next expansion, Apollo, but it gives us an indication that that may be as late as July, so this will certainly be quite a long episode if that is the case. We'll just have to wait and see when Bungie give us confirmation. With relation to the Barrow Dyad though, it looks like this is going to be an exotic mission weapon, and Bungie Leaks shared that the name for this exotic mission is Derealize, which is interesting, and as we've seen in previous episodes, that will be tied significantly to the story. Lastly, right here though, I'm going to run a little section of the video with a bunch of images previewing rewards, including things like the new Iron Banner weapon, Trials cosmetics, which are going to be very interesting. Look at that exotic ship, that's going to be pretty wild. And there's a few other things there as well. Bit of a random roundup really in this video, guys, but given that here in the UK, of course, it's much later in the day. Who knows, by the time Bungie actually get things live, it might just be worth me jumping on early tomorrow to explore more of the Heresy content. So outside of that, if you're still trying to get into the game, good luck, and hopefully things are going to smooth out very soon. For the moment though, give us any thoughts you have on the items we've covered in this video. If you've enjoyed it, a rating below really helps us out as well. Otherwise though, cheers for tuning in today, and I will catch you guys very soon.